My 9-year-old was kicked in the head like a soccer ball, and now the school wants me to forgive the kid who did it. I never thought I'd be in this situation. I'm the kind of person who believes in giving kids second chances, but what happened to my daughter is something I can't just overlook. Here's the story. We live in a neighborhood where most of the families, like us, are immigrants or refugees. It's a tight-knit community in many ways, but our local school can be rough at times. My 9-year-old daughter, let's call her Mia, loves playing basketball with her friends during recess. It's her favorite part of the day. Yesterday, though, it became her worst. Mia was out on the court with her friends, laughing and playing, when this 10-year-old kid, who's had a reputation for being a troublemaker, came up behind her and shoved her to the ground. She told me later that she thought it was an accident at first, so she tried to get up and brush it off. But before she could stand, the kid did something I can barely bring myself to say. He kicked her in the head. Hard. Like she was a soccer ball. I can't even describe the mix of shock and rage I felt when my wife called me, her voice shaking, to tell me what had happened. She went to pick up Mia from school, and when they got home, I could see the damage. Scratches down one side of her face, a black eye, and swelling. My little girl, who's usually full of energy, just sat quietly on the couch, holding an ice pack to her face. The school principal told us he'd handle it. I wanted to believe him, but later that day, he called both me and my wife separately with a request I still can't wrap my head around. He asked us to drop any charges because, according to him, the 10-year-old doesn't understand what they did was wrong. I couldn't believe it. Doesn't understand? This kid kicked my daughter in the head. How could anyone think that's acceptable or something to brush off? When I told the principal I wasn't comfortable letting this slide, he got defensive and said the school would take care of it. But I'd heard nothing about any discipline being handed down, and honestly, his tone made me feel like they just wanted to sweep it under the rug. So, I made a decision. If the school wasn't going to take this seriously, I would. I called the police to file a report. I wanted on record that my daughter was attacked, and I want this kid, and their parents, to understand that actions have consequences. Here's the part that's weighing on me, though. I know the other child's background. I know their family might already be struggling, and bringing the police into this could make things harder for them. But what about Mia? What about her safety and the safety of the other kids at school? If this bully isn't held accountable, what's stopping them from doing it again, to my daughter or someone else? The principal and a few parents in the community are treating me like the villain for involving law enforcement. They say kids make mistakes and that this child didn't mean it. But how far does kids being kids go? My daughter's head could have been seriously injured, or worse. I can't just let that go. Am I the bad guy here for refusing to drop the charges? Or am I doing what any parent would do to protect their child and stand up against violence? Update 1. The morning after I filed the police report, the calls started coming in. First, it was the principal again, insisting we talk this through before things got out of hand. Then it was a couple of parents from the school, people I barely know, telling me I was blowing the situation out of proportion. One even suggested I was trying to ruin a child's life over a playground scuffle. That one set me off. A scuffle? My daughter was kicked in the head like a soccer ball, and they wanted to act like it was some kind of harmless misunderstanding. I ignored most of the calls. My wife wasn't thrilled about that. She thinks I should be trying to de-escalate things, but to me, it already felt like the school and the other parents were trying to manipulate us into dropping the charges. Meanwhile, Mia was quiet and withdrawn. She didn't want to talk about what happened, not even with her mom. She's usually full of energy, but now she seemed like she was walking on eggshells in her own home. The day after the incident, I went to pick her up from school myself. I'd hoped being there in person would make her feel a little safer. When I got to the playground, I spotted the boy who had attacked her. He was standing off to the side with a group of other kids, laughing and playing like nothing had happened. I'm not proud of it, but seeing him there, carefree, while my daughter was dealing with all this, made me furious. I didn't say anything, though. I just waited for Mia and brought her home. That night, the principal called again, this time more insistent. He said the boy's parents wanted to meet with us to discuss the situation. I told him I didn't see the point. The police were handling it now, and as far as I was concerned, there wasn't much left to discuss. But he kept pushing, saying the parents were worried about what this might mean for their son. He even suggested they'd been talking to a lawyer. I agreed to the meeting, not because I wanted to, but because my wife thought it was the right thing to do. She said we needed to at least hear them out, even if we didn't change our minds about pressing charges. So the next morning, we went to the school for what was probably the most uncomfortable meeting I've ever been a part of. The boys' parents were already there when we arrived. The mom looked like she'd been crying, and the dad was sitting stiffly in his chair, arms crossed. The principal started the meeting by asking everyone to remain calm and respectful, which honestly felt a little patronizing. I wasn't planning on yelling or throwing chairs around. The boy's mom was the first to speak. She apologized profusely, saying her son had never done anything like this before. She said he's usually a sweet, well-behaved kid, and she didn't know what had gotten into him that day. Then she started talking about how he's been having a hard time adjusting to school. Apparently, they moved here a couple of years ago, and he's struggled to make friends and fit in. When she said that, I glanced at my wife. We've been through similar struggles ourselves, moving to this community and trying to find our place. I could feel a small part of me starting to soften, but then I looked at Mia, sitting next to me with her head down, and that softness disappeared. I told them I understood their struggles, but that didn't excuse what their son did. The dad jumped in at that point. He was a lot less apologetic than his wife. He said kids fight sometimes, and it's not a big deal. He said we were making a mountain out of a molehill and ruining his son's future over something he didn't even mean to do. I asked him if he thought kicking a child in the head was just kids being kids. He didn't have much to say to that, but the glare he gave me spoke volumes. The principal tried to mediate, saying we should focus on finding a resolution that works for everyone. He suggested the school could set up counseling sessions for both kids and implement a stricter supervision policy during recess. He also brought up the idea of restorative justice, where Mia and the boy would sit down together to talk about what happened and try to move forward. I said no. I told them I wasn't comfortable forcing Mia into a situation where she had to face her attacker, especially not so soon after what happened. I also made it clear that I wasn't dropping the charges. The boy needed to face the consequences of his actions, not just for Mia's sake, but for his own. If no one holds him accountable now, what's to stop him from doing something worse in the future? The mom started crying again, and the dad just shook his head, muttering something under his breath. The principal looked frustrated, like he wasn't used to people ignoring his attempts to smooth things over. My wife stayed quiet through most of the meeting, but on the way home, she told me she wasn't sure we were doing the right thing. That's the part I'm struggling with the most right now. I know I'm doing what feels right to me, but seeing how it's affecting my wife and Mia is making me second-guess myself. Mia's been even quieter since the meeting. She asked me last night if the boy was going to jail, and I didn't know what to tell her. I tried to explain that the police and the court would decide what happens next, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I don't know what's going to happen now. The police are still investigating, and the school seems to be walking on eggshells around us. Some of the parents have started avoiding me at pickup and drop-off, and I heard one of them call me a troublemaker under their breath. But when I think about what happened to Mia, I can't bring myself to care about what other people think. My priority is protecting my daughter, even if it means being the bad guy in someone else's story. Still, there's this small voice in the back of my mind, wondering if I'm making things worse for everyone. I don't regret filing the report, but I do wonder if there's a better way to handle this. Maybe I'll feel differently once this is all over, but right now, all I can do is wait and hope I'm doing the right thing. Update 2. The fallout from all of this has been way bigger than I expected. I thought filing the police report would send a message that what happened to Mia wasn't okay and that we wouldn't just let it slide. But now it feels like it's spiraling out of control. First, the school sent out an email to all parents, vaguely addressing recent conflicts and reiterating their commitment to a safe environment. They didn't name names or give details, but it was obvious what they were talking about. That email kicked off a whole storm of opinions in the parent group chat. I wasn't part of it initially, but someone forwarded me screenshots, and let's just say, not everyone is on my side. Some parents think I'm taking this too far. They're saying it's extreme to involve the police over something that happened between two kids. One mom even suggested I'm trying to criminalize childhood behavior. It feels like they're ignoring the fact that Mia got kicked in the head. How is that just childhood behavior? Other parents, thankfully, are supporting me. They've reached out privately to say they'd do the same thing if it were their kid. One mom told me her son was bullied by the same boy last year, but the school didn't do anything about it. She said she regrets not pushing harder to hold him accountable back then. That only reinforced my belief that I'm doing the right thing, even if it's not the popular choice. Meanwhile, the investigation is moving forward. The police interviewed Mia, which was hard to watch. They were gentle with her, but she's still just a kid. She was nervous and kept looking at me for reassurance. I stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand and letting her know it was okay to tell the truth. The boy's parents are not taking this well, to put it lightly. I've heard through the grapevine that they're furious and have been talking about filing a counterclaim, accusing Mia of provoking their son. That part makes my blood boil. Mia didn't provoke anyone, she was just playing basketball with her friends. Even the principal confirmed that there's no evidence she did anything to start it. But the idea that they tried to twist the story to make her look bad is infuriating. And then there's the boy himself. From what I've heard, he hasn't been at school since this happened. I don't know if his parents are keeping him home or if the school decided to suspend him, but it's been oddly quiet on that front. I'm not sure how to feel about it. On one hand, I don't think he should just get to carry on like nothing happened. On the other hand, I don't want this to turn into some kind of witch hunt. He's a 10-year-old kid, and I don't think he fully understands the gravity of what he did, but that doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. Mia is slowly starting to bounce back, but she's not the same. She used to love going to school, but now she hesitates every morning. She clings to me a little longer when I drop her off and asks me to walk her all the way to her classroom instead of just stopping at the gate. Her teacher says she's been quieter than usual and hasn't been participating in class discussions as much. It's heartbreaking to see how this has affected her confidence. One thing that's been helping her is basketball. She was hesitant to go back to the playground at first, but after some encouragement, she agreed to shoot hoops with me after school one day. At first, she was cautious, looking over her shoulder every few minutes, but by the end, she was smiling and even laughing a little. It felt like a small victory. As for my wife and me, we're not exactly on the same page. She's been supportive overall, but I can tell she's struggling with how far this has gone. She keeps saying things like, "Do you think this is the only way? And what if this makes things worse for Mia?" I don't have good answers for her. I'm doing what feels right, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have doubts. The community tension is palpable. At pickup and drop-off, I can feel the stares and hear the whispers. A few parents have openly confronted me, accusing me of overreacting. One dad even said I was setting a dangerous precedent by getting the police involved in kid stuff. I asked him if he'd still think it was kid stuff if it were his child with a black eye and a swollen face. He didn't have much to say after that. There's also been an unexpected twist. A local news outlet somehow got wind of the story. I have no idea how. They didn't mention any names, but the report was clearly about Mia and the incident at school. They framed it as a debate over how schools should handle bullying and whether legal action is appropriate in situations like this. The comments section was a dumpster fire. People were either fully in my corner or accusing me of being a litigious parent looking for attention. For the record, I haven't talked to any reporters, and I don't plan to. One thing I didn't anticipate was how much this would affect our family dynamic. It's like there's this unspoken tension hanging over everything. My wife and I have had more arguments in the past week than we've had in months. Mia's little brother, who's only 6, has started asking questions about why his sister doesn't want to play outside anymore. We're trying to keep things as normal as possible for him, but it's not easy. I've been reflecting a lot on why I'm so determined to see this through. I think part of it is that I don't want Mia to grow up thinking that people can hurt her without facing consequences. I want her to know that she's worth standing up for, even if it's uncomfortable or unpopular. At the same time, I worry about the long-term effects this will have on her and on us as a family. The next big step is a meeting with the school board, which the principal set up after realizing that this issue isn't going away. They're supposed to outline the steps they'll take to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. I'm skeptical, but I'll go and hear them out. To everyone who's reached out with support, thank you. It means a lot to know there are people who understand why I'm doing this. For those who think I'm overreacting, I hope you never have to see your child hurt and scared the way I saw Mia. I don't know where this will all end, but I'll keep you updated. For now, we're just trying to take it one day at a time. Update 3. This whole ordeal has finally reached some kind of conclusion, and honestly, I'm still processing everything. It's been exhausting, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I wanted to share where things stand now and what we've learned from all of this because, if nothing else, it's been an eye-opener. The meeting with the school board turned out to be more productive than I expected. When we walked in, they seemed prepared to dismiss us with the usual platitudes about addressing the issue internally. But when we started talking, really laying out what happened and how the school initially handled it, you could see some of them shifting uncomfortably in their seats. We brought photos of Mia's injuries, copies of the email exchanges with the principal, and even statements from a couple of parents whose kids had witnessed the incident. One of those parents, bless her, was brave enough to show up in person and back us up. She said her own son had been targeted by the same boy in the past, but nothing was ever done about it. Hearing her speak seemed to make the board realize this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was part of a bigger problem they'd been ignoring. In the end, the board committed to a full review of their policies on bullying and violence. They also agreed to implement stricter supervision during recess and a clearer protocol for handling incidents like this. It's not perfect, and it won't undo what happened to Mia, but it's a step in the right direction. As for the boy who hurt Mia, the police investigation wrapped up, and the outcome was complicated. Because he's so young, they didn't press formal charges. Instead, he's being required to attend a series of counseling sessions focused on anger management and understanding boundaries. His parents are also being brought into the process, which I think is important because, let's be honest, a lot of this probably starts at home. Speaking of his parents, I had one final interaction with them that left me with mixed feelings. His mom approached me after the school board meeting, looking completely drained. She apologized again and said she wished she could go back and handle things differently. She admitted they hadn't really talked to their son about his behavior before this, assuming he'd just grow out of it. She said this whole situation had been a wake-up call for their family. I told her I appreciated the apology but that it didn't change how badly Mia had been hurt, both physically and emotionally. She nodded and said she understood, then asked if we'd ever consider sitting down with them and their son to talk things through once everything settled down. I told her I'd think about it. Mia's doing better, but she still has her moments. She's back to playing basketball at recess, which feels like a small victory, but she's not as carefree as she used to be. She's more cautious now, and sometimes I catch her watching the other kids like she's waiting for something bad to happen. It breaks my heart, but I'm trying to focus on the fact that she's rebuilding her confidence, even if it's slower than I'd like. We've also started taking her to therapy. At first, she was hesitant. She didn't want to talk about what happened, not even with a professional, but after a few sessions, she's opening up. The therapist is helping her work through her fear and anxiety, and she's teaching her ways to cope when she feels overwhelmed. It's been a huge relief to see her starting to smile more and enjoy things again. As for me, I've been reflecting a lot on everything that's happened. I don't regret filing the police report, even though it caused a lot of backlash. If I hadn't done it, I think the school would have brushed this under the rug, and that boy would have never faced any real consequences. But I'll admit, there were moments when I questioned myself. This whole situation put a strain on our family, especially on my relationship with my wife. We've had more than a few arguments about whether we handled things the right way. She was worried that pushing so hard would make Mia feel even more anxious, and she hated seeing our family become the center of so much drama. But in the end, she admitted she was proud of me for standing up for Mia. She said it showed her that we'll always fight for our kids, no matter what. The school community, though. Yeah, that's a whole other story. Some parents have been supportive, but others are still giving us the cold shoulder. I've overheard people whispering about us at drop-off, and one dad even called me a troublemaker to my face. At first, it bothered me, but now I just let it roll off my back. People can think what they want. I wasn't doing this for them, I was doing it for my daughter. One unexpected silver lining is that this has opened up conversations about bullying in our community. After the local news report came out, a few parents reached out to thank us for speaking up. One mom told me her son had been bullied so badly at a previous school that they had to move, and she wished she'd had the courage to take a stand like we did. Hearing that made me feel like maybe all of this wasn't for nothing. Looking back, this whole experience has taught me a lot about parenting, community, and standing up for what's right. It has also made me realize how much work we still have to do to create safe spaces for kids. No child should have to go through what Mia did, and no parent should have to fight this hard just to get people to take it seriously. For now, we're focused on moving forward. We're spending more time together as a family, trying to help Mia rebuild her confidence and reminding her every day that she's loved and supported. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but I believe we're on the right path. To everyone who shared their thoughts, advice, and encouragement, thank you. It's been a tough journey, but knowing we weren't alone in this made a world of difference. This will probably be my last update, as I'm ready to close this chapter and focus on the future. For what it's worth, I hope this story reminds people to stand up for their kids and for what they believe in, even when it's hard. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it.